My Impact, Influence and Confidence programme is designed with talented women in mind to engage, inspire and build self-belief at work. For more information, go to bitfamous.co.uk. Hi, I'm Penny Haslam. Today in the podcast, so this session today for you right now is going to be a panel discussion about panel discussions and a book launch all in one. Panel Discussions, The Ultimate Guide is available in paperback, Kindle and as an audiobook. Let's get started. Let me introduce our fabulous panellists. We have, as part of our panel discussion, the meat in the sandwich or vegan alternative, people who have got experience of moderating and being a guest on a panel, and they're going to share with us now how they prepare, perform and benefit from saying yes to a panel. Please welcome Asif Chowdhury and Simi Gandhi Whitaker and Fiona Mackay and Sharon Amesu. Hello, hello, hello. So Asif, hello. You're the Sales and Marketing Director at Resource, and Asif is also a Chartered Marketer and Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. I think it's fair to say he's involved in marketing, right? So Sharon, hello Sharon. Where are you, lovely Sharon? Yeah, thanks for painting your office blue, by the way, to match the book cover. Sharon is an equality, diversity and inclusion specialist and works with leaders to help them be better, basically, don't you, Sharon? Okay. Fiona Mackay is the MD of Lightbulb Leadership Solutions and the founder of Feedback First, that looks at the role that gender-biased feedback conversations have on women. International Women's Day this year. I bet you are panel booked out, Fiona, with that information and your research, of course, called Why Feedback Holds Women Back. And then Simi, last but not least, Simi Gandhi Whitaker, works for Mighty PLC. You might have seen their logos on vans everywhere. You'll know the logo, Mighty. It's a facilities management organisation. And Simi has a role as Strategic Innovation and Technology Director, showing Mighty's clients how tech can add real value to their real estate decisions. So on the cusp of modernity, indeed. And when it comes to panels, Simi reckons authenticity is key. So Simi, to you first then. How might you be authentic on a panel?
Be yourself, in simple words. I mean, I've learnt the hard way to try and be something different over the years. One director, old-fashioned, male, not anything against the male or the typical norm, but he was just not exciting, not interesting. And he told me to be a chameleon and that I must adapt to certain situations and be that person in that situation. And I was quite young at the time and coming through my career. And
that's not what you need to hear, is it? It's like fit in. Blend in, love.
Fitting in is not what I do. I want to be myself. I want to be different. I want to stand out. And actually, that's what's got me to the position that I am today.
Great, good. And you do that on panels, giving yourself permission to do that. So welcome all of you. Thank you very much for joining me and being my friend for the book launch and masterclass. That's really nice of you. I want to know what your tips are or what your main approaches when it comes to preparing for panels. Now, I know some of you have done more moderating than being panelists, but let's take a flavour. Simi, I'll come back to you first. You're mostly a panellist. How do you prepare?
I kind of stalk the other panellists to find out what they're all about and where I would stand out and add value. So, I think it's about giving each other that airtime and being kind and sort of, and what value do I bring to the panel? I think it's about really understanding the topic and actually being passionate about the topic. So I won't just rock up to a panel just for the sake of having my face somewhere and thinking I might get a little bit of a mini PR or social media coverage. I do it because I care and I'm passionate about it. And also just kind of key salient points. I think Penny's top tips were really important, but just, be really direct and straight to the point in what you want to get across, and also what you want to be remembered for. So hopefully that's coming across today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Asif, you have both moderated and taken part as a panelist. Which one do you prefer?
Having that power as the moderator, it's quite a good feeling, I think, to be honest.
Power. So you don't feel like chopped meat, like just always sort of like a side show. You actually feel that there's power. Is that because you can direct the conversation and take it where you want?
Yeah, very much. And I think the whole point of a panel is to spotlight the skills of the actual guests themselves, because the moderator's there to do a job and it's the panel who are delivering the content. So that making sure the conversation is flowing, but definitely if you're a moderator, I think you've got to accept that role for what it is, and you're just making sure the agenda's flowing, the conversation's flowing, but you've got to make sure the speakers are getting their airtime, and you know what's right about the speakers, and you know who to go to for which answers to which questions, especially when it's an open question portal as you've got now.
Fiona?
I prefer moderating. And the reason I really enjoy moderating is I'm quite a curious person. So I'm really interested in how I can get answers to questions, which typically, to Simi's point, some people on panels feel a little bit cautious about answering, but you can tell they really, really want to share it. And I know when I'm in the audience observing a panel, that's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear the corporate claptrap. I actually want to get inside someone's mind, their thoughts, their experiences, their opinions, and have those as my takeaways. So as a panel moderator, I really love doing that.
And rather brilliantly, you, Fiona, got asked to step in last minute, didn't you, to a moderator's shoes? And this was at a big event, and it was the Prime Minister of Greece, am I right, who'd bailed out? Oh, is that the wrong term to use with Greece? Bailout. But anyway, you stepped in, didn't you? That wasn't planned. You stepped in to his shoes and moderated a really top-notch panel, didn't you? That's scary.
Yeah, and it was scary. And I said, look, to the event organisers, I was already there doing a keynote. And it's when Omicron had hit, and it was a big conference over in Barcelona. So people's travel plans literally changed at the 11th hour. And as a world leader, he just couldn't leave. So the event organiser said, oh, can we just ask you whilst you're here, would you mind stepping in? I said, well, can I just manage some expectations here? I am not a world leader. Let's get this down. I tell you what, we'll make it really easy. Can you just get him to send his questions and I'll read them out? I thought, oh, I've smashed it there. No, it doesn't quite work like that. Could you ask your own? Oh, God. So I stayed up all night. I stayed up all night and I did my questions, and I stepped in, and there was 15 really powerful world leaders around that table as well in financial services and banking. And I was really proud with the fact that I thought, you know what, I'm not him. I've just got to ask some really good questions and get some really interesting conversation. And I've got nothing to lose. I've not been billed here. So I can perhaps ask the questions that maybe he couldn't have. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I would recommend, if you do get those opportunities and you think you can do it and you want to challenge yourself, go for it, because you're there for a reason. Back yourself.
So Sharon, you are more of a panelist, aren't you? And you have got some preparation tips for being a panelist, a bit like what we've heard, but you've also got an idea about that whole stepping into the role. There's a lot of fear around saying yes to being a panelist, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. And I completely concur, Penny, with everything that's been said around the room. All of that most definitely resonates with me. And I often think about my own preparation before either being a panel host or a panelist. And part of it starts for me before I even enter through the door. And that's looking at the inner work. And I really think about, how do I want to show up in the room? And what impression, to Simi's point, what impression do I want to leave with this audience? And so I tend to arrive at that through 3 words that I'd like them to describe of how I came across when I was speaking on this panel, and really think about embodying that in the moment. It's also really important as well for grounding myself. So Simi was talking about being authentic, and I completely agree. And for me, it starts even a step before that, in that I really think about, who am I in this? Because sometimes the panels that I sit on, the other panelists can, on the face of it, be really intimidating. And I can feel as though I'm a small fish in a huge pond. And unless and until I ground myself in the fact that I've been invited to this metaphorical table, as it were, and that I've got something valid to contribute, then I'll somewhat be reticent with my own voice in that space. So grounding myself in who I am enables me to show up authentically. The other thing that I really try to do where possible, Penny, is when I arrive at the venue, I try to mingle with the audience, and I try to build rapport and relationships, so that when it comes to actually sitting on the panel, it becomes much more of a conversation with the audience, as opposed to a me and them situation and I'm the living expert. But actually it's a conversation with people that I've already built rapport with. And the other thing that I definitely am really mindful of is, what is it that the host wants for their audience? So I'm really keen to understand from them, what are the 3 things that you want your audience to leave with, so that I'm aligned to that in what I bring to the table.
Great. I think that's so valuable, isn't it? Because we can easily reach for imposter syndrome or self-doubt if we realise that the other people are magnificent. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. I've worked with people who are heads of their own business, national businesses, and they've said to me, who am I to be on that panel? God blimey, if you think that, there's no hope for us. But yeah, it is about helping yourself to, and grounding yourself to think, well, actually, I do have something valuable to say. And actually, there are opportunities for people in their early careers to talk about their early careers and the experiences there. So it depends on the nature of the topic, doesn't it, of course? Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
So there's physical preparation of having some ideas, maybe making notes. There's mental preparation. What about in the moment? You know, when you're actually sitting down in the tub chair, because it's pretty much always a tub chair, isn't it? You're sitting down and the moderator's there and they say your name and you know that they're going to ask you a question and your adrenaline just goes whoo, doesn't it? How do you manage all of that, and how do you perform really well? Because it is a performance, isn't it? I'm going to come to Sharon on that, and then Asif.
Okay, so it really is important. I remember when so my background's law, Penny, and I was a criminal barrister for 16 years. And in preparing witnesses, I'd always say to them, don't just rush to the answer. Actually understand what has been asked of you, because you may answer the wrong question and then have to remedy that post fact. So it's very much listening to the question and grounding yourself and not being too quick. So it's the tension between wanting to respond and think quickly on your feet, but also responding to the question that has actually been asked. And so I always encourage myself to not be afraid of the pause. Sometimes it can feel like hours in our own minds when we're actually processing what has happened, but it really is just a few short seconds. So just allowing yourself to hear the actual question and then respond to the question that's been asked of you.
Asif, how do you feel when you're sitting there waiting for that first question to come to you, and how do you manage your energy and your performance of it all?
I think it's that iceberg effect, isn't it? You know, whether you're a seasoned speaker on the circuit or your first time on a panel, I think everyone gets nervous, and I think everyone has to appreciate that fact in itself first and foremost. And I think certainly the point Sharon just raised there about the pause is a perfect point, to be honest with you, because you've got to you've got a amount of time to deal with the answer, and you've got probably quite a few points to get across. So how do you process that quickly? And for anybody who's not experienced on panels, it just comes with experience and with time. And that's where I think the moderator, if there is a pause, or the panelist is potentially struggling with the answer if they're new to that, because there may be a subject matter expert, but there may not be an expert panelist. So they have the knowledge, but they can't articulate that. So the moderator's job is really important to help them to just eke out the answers with a few more probing questions potentially. But definitely the iceberg effect. So if anyone's in an audience, either Zoom or virtual or in person, don't think for 1 minute that the panelist isn't as scared as you are, if you would be if you were on the panel as well.
Yeah, I love that idea of the iceberg. It's like, I'm so nervous. But also that dials back nicely into the preparation that you would do with maybe a briefing call or a meeting with the panellists, getting them all together, understanding what they might say. So if you do see a panellist struggling, you can go, oh, now Kathy or Dave, you were telling us, you've got a point to make, haven't you, about this experience you had with the such and such. So you kind of lead them to it, because you've got that knowledge. Yes, okay, so Fiona and Simi, when you're sitting there waiting for the others to finish talking and maybe you're third in line, you've got something to say, how do you know when to jump in? How do you manage the performance of jumping in? You can't really do it on Zoom very easily, but you can in person. But Fiona, do you just go, stand aside? I've got something to say.
No, I think it's like anything. It's taking your cues and knowing your points and knowing what actually needs some kind of balance to it, because people can just go on a bit. And to get your point across, I think it's always good if you're on a panel to actually turn to your panel moderator and say, actually, I'd like to just stand in at this point. And it's easier then for the panel moderator to often make space for you if you don't feel so comfortable just jumping in. If it's quite a vibrant panel discussion where you've got very different views, and that's the whole point of being on that panel, it doesn't really matter so much if you jump in. But if it's a more sedate, sort of expert-led, genteel discussion, I wouldn't recommend jumping in, because you can come across as quite aggressive. And that's not and that can really misrepresent who you are. And sometimes it's just your excitement because you want to get your point across. So it's really knowing, is it going to be a vibrant, we're going to have some really different discussions here and different points of view, or is it a genteel walk through a topic with different aspects to it? And I would always go to my moderator and sort of make a cue to them first. That would be my advice.
Yeah, and in person, that's all right, isn't it? You can do a bit of eye contact or a nod, me next, yeah, or even put your hand up a bit. Online, it's harder, isn't it? Simi, have you got any experience of how you might jump in, either in person or online? How might you do that?
I think it's linked to what Fiona said. There's two things. One is reading the room, whether it's virtual or in person, and also I think it's having etiquette. And I think something that I've introduced in many Teams calls is actually putting your hand up, and you know, in internal sort of sessions, it's easy to do that, but on an external forum like that, I think it's really important to have that kindness and that etiquette with our other fellow panelists. I used to be an excited puppy years ago and wanted to jump in all the time, but I've learned that actually being considered is fine. You know, you can still get that opportunity to get your point across, still show the passion, still show your authentic side, but just be patient and just be considered, and just actually sometimes a moment goes. So it's reading that room and think, actually, I don't really need to go back and make that point. It's fine. And then you have the networking opportunity later, and you can pick that point person out or speak to them direct. So it's kind of, you know, it sounds really obvious, but when you're in the moment, your emotions and everything can take over. So just kind of be considered and think about it and go back to being your authentic self.
And the adrenaline and the nerves, and if you've got a situation that you're not expecting, like you're in a lineup and the microphones aren't quite right, or you haven't got a chair that you imagined before you arrived, or even in my case, I was taking part in an event, I was doing the keynote, and then I was taking part in a panel discussion afterwards. The moderator hadn't been revealed to me. In fact, I'd asked, who's moderating the event? Who's going to be the host of the thing? And they said, oh, no, it's a surprise, actually. I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe they haven't decided yet. Maybe they're a bit behind with all of that. Who knows? It turned out, because the location was in a theatre, that they'd got a pantomime dame to host the whole event and moderate the panel. And guess what? She did a costume change every time, and it was a business event. And I'm there going, I'm here to speak to a business audience. What the hell? She was doing hands, knees and toes, knees and head, shoulders, knees and with the audience. And I'm there going, oh my goodness. But she wasn't good at moderating because she ignored one of the panellists who wasn't very forthcoming. So there was a balance to be struck there. But the nerves side of things can really cause a problem. In fact, we've had a question from Emma Walker. Top tips, please, panel, if you find yourself down a train of thought or on a panel where you're a bit far from where you meant to be. Maybe you haven't prepared some stuff, or maybe nerves have taken over and you're having an out-of-body experience where you're looking down on yourself going, what are you saying? Wind it back now. How do you get out of that? How do you work that out? Has anyone got any ideas? So put your hand up if you want to go first on that. Sharon.
So I think it's courageous to just stop. Just stop and say, sorry, that's happened to me. It's happened to me many times.
Right.
And having the courage to just stop and say, do you know what? And make light of it where possible. Goodness me, what am I talking about? Let me start again and start again. Because if you just continue on, that hole just gets bigger and bigger, and you keep on digging and you just lose the audience and you start to lose credibility. Yeah. But if you just allow yourself to be the imperfect panelist, that's okay. And if you segue into that and transition through that in a way which is lighthearted, especially where you've built rapport with the audience, they'll be with you. And what you'll feel ashamed actually won't be so significant. So I would say just stop where you are and find a way to navigate through.
Brilliant. Yeah. Simi, you had this, didn't you, in the summer? You had a meltdown, is that right? Is it fair to call it a meltdown? Not really.
Yeah, it was. And it was a virtual event. And I was there talking about tech. And I had the wheel of death and it all went crazy wrong. And I had my second screen and my notes disappeared. And actually, for a second, I just thought to myself, we're all people. So I 100% agree with what Sharon's saying is, it's just, let's not have an ego and carry on and then flounder and fluster the way through something. And as you say, Sharon, lose the audience. Let's just keep it real, and say, actually, sorry, I've lost my train of thought here. Or just say, let me just revert back. But, be honest. And what I've noticed in those scenarios is half the time people don't notice. So if you just stop, take a second, regroup, start again, no one's really noticed. It's just me because I've gone off cue on my notes.
Okay, brilliant. Asif, I've got a question for you from Bev Wood. It's an excellent question. How do you use a virtual sheep hook to stop a panellist carrying on? And Fiona, perhaps you can answer this as well. The moment, so I moderated a panel. It was about Brexit, and we had 3 lawyers on. It was for a legal team and an audience that were lawyers. I don't know if you know this, Sharon and Fiona, you've got legal backgrounds. They go on a bit, don't they? Right, lawyers? And the first guy, I'd prepped them all. I'd sent my email out to them. I go, hi, I'm Penny. I'm moderating. I'm going to be asking you about this, and this. I look forward to having the briefing chat. Just so you know, I'm going to introduce all of you. And when I do, I'm going to ask you a little question that's just a light little answer. It was for the audience to get to know the voice and for them to warm up. And so the fourth person isn't sitting there like a bit of a lemon at the end, waiting to be introduced. He didn't read the memo on that. And he spoke for about 4 minutes on his topic that I didn't ask him about. And it was unfortunate because it was a bit awkward. And I couldn't interrupt him. I don't know why, I just didn't feel I could. So sheep hook, when you want a panellist to easy in person, difficult online, what might you do?
We'll trial it out now, Penny, and I'll just keep talking until you're ready to hook me off the screen.
Great, so that's super. Thank you very much, Asif. Fiona, it was a bit short, a bit abrupt, wasn't it?
I actually think the chat box is your friend virtually, because you can send messages and say, cut it down now, quickly. And that's the first thing that you can do as the moderator. So don't feel that chat box is there, because that can get more comfortable with the tech as the moderator. Use it as your friend. And sometimes you do have to say, oh, actually, we've really, really got to be tight on time. So perhaps when we come back to the end, we can pick up on that point. next question. So it's not shutting someone down. It's knowing that they're still going to get space and you're respecting that their time and their input is valuable to that piece, but it needs to take a different place in the ring order.
Yes, it is. It's very un-British as well to interrupt someone, isn't it, and to shut them down. But nonetheless, you're serving the audience, and I think that's ultimately who you need to be thinking about, isn't it? Panelists and moderators alike. It's what does the audience, what have they come for? What do they want to find out, and how can we keep them on time and get to the topics that we've got on the list, rather than just keeping on this one particular topic. So let me look for some more questions. Heather's been doing a great job of sending them to me. Sharon has asked, any tips to open up the audience and get people asking questions? Sharon, I have put in the book, you see I'm doing a book, don't know if you knew that, about how to handle audience questions in all the different scenarios. And of course, there's nothing worse, is there, than, audience questions. Anyone got a question? So, I'll come back to you. And it's awful, isn't it? So, any tips?
I always like to prime the audience. So throughout, I will remind them that we'll come to a Q&A section. And as we're approaching that, I'll remind them again. When we get to it, I will have a question ready. So I'll say we're about to have some questions. I will ask the first question. So I'll always have a couple of questions ready so that we don't have that gap. Usually by the time I've asked the first question, because they've been primed for it, the audience are ready to then go into flow. But always having a question there, a couple of questions that you're ready, and reminding the audience that questions and that Q&A is coming, I think is a great way to prepare for that.
I, at the beginning, set out 3 scenarios that the audience might be interested in. So if I'm moderating something like how to navigate the new VAT regulations in a post-Brexit, situation, and topics do come up like that, and I do go, oh yeah, I'll moderate that. That's interesting. I might go, you might want to know about ferry crossings. You might want to know about logistics further afield into Northern Ireland, etc. Or you might be thinking about how to tackle HMRC and get the right information. So I'll paint some scenarios that they might want to ask questions about. It also makes me look knowledgeable, but I know nothing about the topic. It's always good. Okay, so we're going to bring it to an end. I do have a final question for you. And there are lots of benefits to being on panels. You've all told me that in our briefing call that we had. You get some exposure, you get to network with other people, you can add value, you might get to collaborate with others. It's really, really good. You get to shake hands with the whole room in one go, and you share the load. You're not necessarily delivering a keynote, and it's not always about you. So, final question for you. How might you get on a panel in the first place? So that's a question from Carol Salmon.
The way I did it, or the way I started out, was being part of my industry networks. So going to networking events back in the day when we could, and then I started talking about my career journey, as I think, Penny, you alluded to that at the start, and that was how it all began for me personally. But getting out there, networking, meeting people, showing that credibility, your hot topic areas. For me, again, I'm very passionate about diversity and inclusivity. So I used to get asked to join a lot of things related around that topic. And over the years, I've been, kind of become a bit of an SME. So I'm going to join Microsoft and talk about tech. And it's really important that me as a female of color is represented. So it's how you it's where you want to get to, really, and how you navigate that. But it's all about, I keep saying it, but it's authenticity. Don't be something that you're not.
Okay, lovely. And we're going to bring that full circle and end the panel discussion there. There is a whole chapter on how to get on panels in the first place, which if you're starting out is really invaluable, because, how would you go about it? It's not something that is advertised as a job, is it? So think about even creating your own event. So thank you all very much, Asif, Simi, Fiona and Sharon. Round of applause for you. Thank you very much. Fabulous. Lovely to see you all. Thank you for joining me. I hope your working lunch was fantastic. And thank you to our panellists. Thank you all very much. And I'll see you soon. Take care. My third book is coming out in 2024. It's all about confidence at work and in life. And as you'd expect from me, there are lots of stories and ideas to help you build confidence, whether it's for yourself or for others. It might be colleagues, teammates, friends and family. Head to pennyhaslam.co.uk/confidence-book.